The human brain is the most powerful organ in our body, also the most complex organ in our body. The way our mind processes and controls our behavior is probably the most fascinating thing ever. Psychology is a scientific study of our mind and behavior. Psychologists have come up with many different psychological theories. One psychological theory that is not very much discussed is the contagion theory. Well, my name is Quinn Robles, and today I will be introducing to you the contagion theory and how it affects society. So, you may be asking yourself, what is the contagion theory? Well, the contagion theory is a psychological theory first theorized by a man named Gustave Le Bon in 1885. It is the spread of a behavior pattern, attitude, or emotion from person to person or group to group through suggestion, propaganda, and imitation. Usually the word contagion means spread by touch, like how viruses are spread. The contagion theory talks about the collective behavior of human beings. If you ever heard of the saying, monkey see, monkey do, well, that is basically what the contagion theory is. People usually have a habit of following crowds, and in a large group of people behave in a certain way. People have a habit of following behavior of the group. In Gustave Le Bon's book called The Crowd, A Study of the Popular Mind, he mentions normal individual behavior turning irrational or violent according to the nature of the crowd, meaning the transmission of ideas or behavior collectively displayed by an individual when engaged in a group. A good example of this is mass riots like the French Revolution. This type of influential behavior is very common, especially during times of chaos, social injustice, and even social pandemics. Another main point about the contagion theory is the different crowds that are persuaded. There are 5 different types of crowds: the casual crowd, conventional crowd, expressive crowd, acting crowd, and the 5th type is the protest crowds. Psychologists refer to this type of group as groupthink. The larger the group of individuals, the more likely it is to make choices based on emotions rather than logical and common sense. This part of the contagion theory was later added by Robert Park and Herbert Bloomer. People act as a contagion to avoid individual responsibility and act as a crowd. People think as a group instead of thinking personally. People tend to be unaware of their behavior in crowds, and Robert Park expanded on the theory and added that humans have a tendency to mimic and attach to a group when stressed, reflect actions when any person can act as a leader. Crowds are easily swayed, and crowds attach to people with a dominant or charismatic personality who easily affect crowd opinions and manipulate groups. They appeal to the groups emotionally, taking advantage of the affirmational groupthink. We see this a lot with politicians, and during elections, politicians appeal to the mass to gain votes, and without the audience's knowledge of how it's actually a form of manipulation and very much contributes to the contagion theory. The last thing to know about the contagion theory is the contagion behavior. Contagion behavior can have exceptions and exclusions. This is due to the internal human mechanism. Usually, people who have individualistic mindsets or avoid conflict do not display contagion behavior. The 2 different types of a contagion are contagion by cohesion and contagion by structural equivalence. Contagion by cohesion is the influence from direct communication, whereas contagion by structural equivalence is due to similar communication patterns. An example of contagion by cohesion is a presenter acting as a leader, persuading the audience by playing to the audience's emotion. An example of contagion by structural equivalence would be a group of protesters committing acts of violence, permitting other individuals around them to have the same behavior without any knowledge of why the protesters are doing so. Imitation is taken as human nature, while contagion is natural extension. Well, now that you are aware of what the contagion theory is, it is important to know how it affects individuals in society. Because of the complexity of our minds and how it affects human behavior, sometimes we are unaware of how we may partake in contagion behavior due to it being considered uncontrollable. There are many different psychological theories that have been proposed by several psychologists throughout history. If you're ever interested in learning about human behavior, psychological theories are definitely a great way to learn more about it. My name is Quinn Robles. Thank you.